Payne County, Oklahoma. It's August. It's hot, and school is about to start. Welcome back, students of Oklahoma State University. We're glad you're back. Most of us are glad you're back. You take up a lot of space. You take all the food at Walmart. You crowd the restaurants, and this morning I had to be like at a stoplight for like a minute. Usually I'm only at that stoplight for like 30 seconds, but now you're here, and so you're taking up the road. But anyway, welcome everyone. Glad you're with us for another episode. Father Carey is back in town. We're going to work on schedules, and he is going to be back on the show, and he's going to tell us all about his sabbatical and all the many places that he went. And then we'll also kind of preview what's coming up with the school year, especially at St. John's. And then we'll tell you a little bit about what's going on here at St. Francis Xavier as well. So anyway, good stuff. I am joined today. So last week I had Deacon Tom Cabine talking about what it's like to become a Catholic. Today is a little shift. My guest today is a convert to Catholicism, but we can talk about that a little bit. But she has the coolest family in the world, and I want you to hear about her family. Joining me today is Lori Wieder. Welcome, Lori.
Hello.
Lori's never been on a podcast, so this is pretty exciting. Well, she's never been on the radio, except you called in. You said you called in?
Oh, yeah. I'm an 80s kid.
Back in the day, you call in to request a song?
Call in for the dedications.
Oh, like a Saturday night,
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Okay. I'm sure those are recorded somewhere. Okay, Lori, tell us a little bit about where you're from, how you got to Stillwater, and how you became a Catholic.
Well, I grew up in Henrietta, Oklahoma, which is an hour south of Tulsa.
Right on 75. They have a quick trip now.
We do.
That was pretty exciting.
Our claim to fame. It's home of Troy Aikman.
Troy Aikman, yes, who
and
went.
Jim Shoulders.
And Jim Shoulders, that's right.
Right.
And Quick Trip. Well,
yes.
A Quick Trip. Okay, you grew up in Henrietta, and what were you as a younger person?
I grew up Baptist.
Right on. What was that like?
It was kind of the cool church.
Oh, is that right?
It was
really?
the cool church.
Kind of the best youth group going?
That and the Methodist. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
People kind of switched between the two.
Okay.
Depending on what the activities were.
Sure.
Go to the ski trip with the Baptists.
But you were a Baptist.
I was a Baptist.
Your parents were Baptists?
Yes.
And their parents before them were Baptists?
Well, my dad's mom was Pentecostal.
Oh, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, so you grew up in Henrietta, and then what happened? You graduated high school?
Graduated high school, followed a boy to OSU.
Not your husband?
Not my husband.
All right, that's another podcast waiting
Thank you, Jesus.
Waiting to be told. So you came to OSU to be near him?
I followed him, and it's funny how
What's
God
he doing
works.
now?
He's married.
Okay, well, good for him. Right on.
So, came here, kind of looked for a church, and kind of went to a couple different Baptist churches here, and never really found a good home. Graduated here, went to UCO, and got a master's degree. Found an interdenominational.
What was your degree at OSU?
Bachelor, psychology.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay, then you go to UCO.
Found an interdenominational church, huge, kind of a mega church-ish thing. Services were like 2.5 hours long.
Oh, my.
Lots of singing, lots of dancing.
Wow.
And went there while I was in graduate school. Graduated from there. Went to work for Seminole State College. And had a friend still here in Stillwater that played City League softball, and they needed a warm body. So
You're not a dominant softball player, Lori?
I'm not a dominant athlete.
Okay, I see. You do CrossFit.
Okay, well, yeah.
You're rocking the CrossFit.
But I'm not dominant there either.
I guess. More of a hobby.
It is.
All right, so you're on the softball team, and?
So I just happened to meet my husband. And
he was on your team? or on the opposing team?
Neither.
Oh.
We went out afterwards, and
Okay.
I met him, and
There we
so
go. And you've been married now how long?
it will be
To
25 years in
Mike
February.
Wieder. Wow. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And so Mike works at OSU. He works
Mm-hmm.
in fire
Protection
fire
publications.
protection publications.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. If you need some good reading before bed,
Yeah.
throw down on some of those fire protection publications. So Lori in the parish has been a parishioner. So you became a Catholic what year?
In 99, the same year I got married.
99. Okay. So you've been in and around. I mean, you've been in
Mm-hmm.
the church for a good long time at the old St. Francis Xavier, and now the new place. And you've been in kind of a variety of roles. At the moment, Lori is our wedding coordinator, which that could be a whole other show too.
Woohoo.
Good stories from being a wedding coordinator. But I wanted to bring Lori on the show more specifically to talk about her family. So you have her husband Mike, and they've been married 25 years. Mike and Lori have 2 kids. Would you just tell everyone about your kids, and then I want to talk about what it's like to have your kids at this church.
Sure.
Tell us about your kids.
Luke is my oldest. He will be 22 in December.
That's wild.
I know.
Isn't that wild? Wow.
Both of them have a genetic disorder which causes intellectual disabilities. It's kind of a rare disorder, but they both have intellectual disabilities. Luke is nonverbal, so he doesn't talk, but he makes noise.
You hear him.
You do.
Yep.
He will ba-da-ba. He likes to clap. He loves to come to church. Will applaud after a good sermon, good homily.
He does clap a lot.
He will
yep.
clap after a gospel that he really likes. And then Emily will be 19 in September, and she never stops talking, although she doesn't really have a lot to say. But she will repeat lines from shows, and she sings everything. She knows every line to almost every prayer in Mass.
In the Mass, yeah.
Which you threw her saying a Eucharistic prayer was
I
uncommon.
did Eucharistic prayer number 4.
She was a little thrown on that.
Sorry, Emily. I'll never do it. I'll never do it again.
She was kind of like, what's he saying? Those aren't the words. So they're just really good kids that love to go to church.
Yeah.
They love to be here. They enjoy the music. They have their own missals that they follow along and are really insistent on bringing the missals, even if we're going to do something different at Mass. They still want to bring their missals.
Oh,
That's
if they're
important.
coming for Stations of the Cross, they
want to bring their missals. I tell them they have to leave their missals at home because what they're looking, they don't need them.
Oh, they're
but
not.
But they want to bring them. They head to the door carrying them.
And they're. You've told me like during the week they are often like, "Are we going to church? Is it time for church?"
Yes, Emily tends to want to go to church a lot on Mondays.
Oh, that's like
she asks.
It's like the one day we don't really have it.
On Monday morning, go to church. Go to church. There's no Mass today. Go to church. Go to church. There's no Mass today. I'm sorry. You cannot go to Mass today.
When they were born, just tell it about that, about kind of what, at some point did you know they had special needs before they were born?
Not before they were born, but it wasn't long after. Luke didn't sit up. Luke didn't really babble. We thought it was this, we thought it was that, and we didn't really get a good diagnosis on Luke, honestly, until almost the pandemic.
Really?
That was when we got the genetic testing back.
Oh.
They had a lot of the criteria for autism, but not really enough to actually get the diagnosis. So it was kind of assumed they must be somewhere on the spectrum that just isn't there. But then once we got that genetic testing done, it was evident.
Got it.
That was what it was.
Okay. And what was that like? Or I mean, I don't know, as a young parent, help people kind of understand that.
One of the interesting things about having a child with disabilities is there's a grieving process, and that's not something that people really think about. And it's not something that happens and then it's over. It happens with every little season. So when you first get the diagnosis, it's you kind of grieve of what you had planned for your child's life, and then you grieve what they aren't going to have. But then you start thinking, well, they never knew that they could have had that. They go to middle school. I saw all of the little boys playing football out before school, went through it all over again because I was going to go watch my son play football all through school. I was going to go to the baseball games. I was going to watch my daughter cheer. All of those things that they weren't ever going to do. And so then there's that loss of my dreams for them that they don't have. So that kind of a process is hard, but it goes away. You just kind of live with it and move on, because when you think about what they do have and how they do live, it will put it all into perspective. For example, both of them truly believe there's no evil in the world. They
Wow.
think everyone is good and kind
Wow.
and have no ill will towards them, and they just really think there's nothing bad in the world. And I think about infants when they're born and how they rely on their parents, and all they want is love, and that's all they have to give is love back. And in many ways, that's the way my children are as young adults now.
Wow.
All they want is love, and that's all they have to give is love.
Wow. Wow. I've never thought of it that way. Of just, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there comes a point in life, I don't know, there's not, I don't remember it, but like where you
Mhm.
realize, oh, that's bad,
Mhm.
or that's a bad person, or that person doesn't like me,
Or they're saying that to be mean.
oh,
They just,
wow.
if somebody says something, they're not trying to
Wow.
be mean.
Wow. That's amazing.
It's very innocent.
When was that? When did you realize that? Like when, not, not when they were two.
No, honestly, it was probably junior high for Luke and middle school
Uh-huh.
for Emily.
Uh-huh.
With them being 20 months apart, things kind of happened about the same time. But it was when I would see the kids having their first heartbreak, and you hear
Getting
about
bullied or
bullying, yes, and the fact that my kids didn't experience that. And I started thinking about, will they experience that? And I really started looking at them and realizing that they probably won't, because they don't see anything bad. I mean, they they just don't. They're not they don't do things mischievously, although Emily sometimes borders on that.
sure.
But like Luke, he doesn't ever do anything just being naughty. And it's almost he's just
Like he's plotting, okay, now
right.
today I'm going to get that guy.
Right.
None of that.
I mean, he might steal some food out of the refrigerator,
Sure.
but that's just because he's a
No, and they do
human.
know. I mean, they
Oh,
know.
yeah.
They know right from wrong. I mean, I've seen you, in different sort
Right.
of circumstances say, Luke, no, like, no, don't
Right.
do that. Come back here. Sit down, eat,
Oh,
eat your food, or, don't stop watching that, or,
and there are things that we talk about that they need to go to confession about.
Mhm.
And so I bring them to confession, and only you and God knows what happens in those
Sure,
confessions.
sure.
But, we talk about what they need to confess. And, I say, do you think you ought to confess this? And sometimes he's like, no. And it's like, okay, well, you got to be sorry to go to
Sure, sure,
confession.
sure.
So,
Well, and I think one of the things, when I first got here, before I got here, my predecessor was Father Ken Harder, who you knew well and who knows
mhm.
your family well. And we sat down one day, and he sort of told me about all the special people in the parish. He kind of gave me just a little rundown of like, okay, who, we were just about to sort of merge the parishes, so who's really happy about that, who's mad, who maybe needs a little extra care. He told me about, some of our homebound people who needs a little extra special care. And then part of that was he said, okay, Saturday night, 5 o'clock mass. There's Lori, there's Mike, and they have two kids, Luke and Emily. And he said, Luke is gonna kind of make a lot of noise. He claps. Emily, you're gonna kind of hear her. And I remember just thinking, oh, okay, let's see what that's all about, And then you get, and I think what people, especially I think Saturday night 5 o'clock people, and just people who have been around a long time. I mean, I think they really, I think just like admire you and Mike and kind of how you've that like yes, your children have special needs, they have intellectual disabilities, but like that doesn't stop you.
Right.
Like you're not coming, because of that. But I think there's a story like behind that. Almost like easier said than done. Could you talk through like what that's been like as a Catholic family, having two children with special needs? What has it been like, either here in Stillwater, kind of good and bad, and then I know you guys travel and you've been to other places. What is that like? Maybe for those who are listening, to help them understand what it's like for you just to go to mass.
Sometimes it's really hard. If Emily is having a bad day, or if Luke is having a bad day, then it's hard to get out the door sometimes. And I know for others, there are families with special needs members that it's even harder for them than it is for us. But sometimes, Luke is more noisy. Emily picks at Luke and like doesn't want him to fidget with his fingers, or she will do Peppa Pig all through mass instead of what she should. So for the most part, the parishioners at St. Francis have been just wonderful. They have been very welcoming. We typically do not get any kind of an eye roll or any negative comments, as a rule, on the children. We sit in the front row so that they have an unobstructed view. We kind of started that when they were toddlers, and now there's
I always
no
feel bad when we have some special event and we like reserve the first couple rows, a baptism or something,
Right.
and Luke
Luke looks at him.
rolls in and goes to the front row and just kind of stares at people like, what are you doing in my seat?
I know.
And then you're like, Luke, we're gonna sit in the third row, and
It's okay.
for this
Yeah.
one time.
So, but we do that because then they pay attention, and we're able. When they were smaller, I would say, "Oh, look, Father's got the chalice. He's raising it up. Jesus is in the cup," and pointing things out like that through Mass, and that kind of helped engage them through Mass. So now they kind of
They
also
know,
do
yeah,
that.
they know what's going on, and
Right.
Emily, it's really, I mean, it's amazing. And sometimes she's loud. Some masses kind of louder than others, but like she knows the words of the mass, and will oftentimes, as I'm saying them at the altar, I hear her little voice in the front row. She's saying it with me.
Oh, she does.
She knows like all the words.
And I always feel a little bad about the people that are sitting around us, especially visitors, because they didn't come to hear Emily say Mass. So I'm always, shh, let Father say that. So
What's that like? I mean, so when a visitor comes, or our own, people, is it, how self-conscious are you?
I'm more self-conscious at other churches than I am at ours, or if we have a lot of visitors. I will turn around and apologize to visitors or kind of give them the heads up ahead of time if we have a lot of visitors sitting around us. Easter, because we have a lot of visitors at Easter, I'll say, I just want to apologize in advance. My daughter's probably going to say Mass with Father, and I'm sorry, but for the most part, people are appreciative of the warning, I think.
Sure.
So they're
And
not
I do
caught
it
off
too when we
guard.
have a visiting priest. I do. I tell them.
Mm-hmm.
I said most likely, there's going to be this family in the front row, and I give, there might be some
Right.
clapping,
Mm-hmm.
and some jumping.
Yes. Celebration.
And I think that I would want to know that if I were, just so I don't
Right.
think they're obviously not being disrespectful, and in fact they're being the exact opposite of
They're making a joyful
they're
noise.
praying. Yeah, they're praying. They're
Right.
faithful. Yeah.
Right.
What's it like to go to a visit, like to visit another
Some
church?
churches are not as welcoming.
And what does not welcoming look like to your family?
People giving kind of the stinky eye. If Luke claps, we don't clap in church. Or we once had a priest before Luke had received First Communion. He went up for the blessing, and the priest just kind of overlooked him and just looked over him, gave me communion, and just kind of brushed Luke off. And Luke was in tears. He sobbed the
no.
rest of Mass
Oh.
because he knew he was supposed to get a blessing, and he
Yeah.
didn't get a blessing.
Oh.
We went up to the priest afterwards. I just explained to Luke, oh, he was busy. We'll get one after Mass. And I went up to him afterwards and said, Luke didn't get a blessing at communion, and he really wants one. And he looked at me and said, I don't do that.
Oh.
So Luke started crying again.
Oh.
But a deacon was standing there, and he said, I'll do it.
Oh.
And Luke knew that a blessing from a deacon was okay. And so I said, look, deacon's going to give you a blessing. And then he was
Wow.
fine.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really hard when you don't feel that acceptance around you. And
And you're saying and I know like it's not a total comparison, but like moms with loud babies, right?
oh right,
They oftentimes will say, yeah, people kept like looking at me. The lady in front, they didn't say anything,
right,
and they didn't have to say anything.
because you know what they're thinking.
It was a look. They turned around, a little scowl or an eye roll or eyebrows up.
I would say sometimes you can't help but look, but if you do, just because you can't help it, smile.
Yeah.
It makes all the difference in the world.
Smile,
If
thumbs up.
somebody is turning around and because Luke has clapped and maybe it's startling, and so they turn around real quick. If they just kind of smile, then it's like, okay, they're not offended.
It's not
it's
a judge.
okay.
They're not judging.
They're okay.
Yeah.
And so I try to do that, especially with families that have toddlers that are very busy in Mass or babies, and I try to just kind of give them that, hey, you got
You
it.
got this. Yeah.
We're
yeah.
good.
What advice would you give to our own parishioners? And I think what's interesting is I think a lot of people know your family, but there are other families in our parish, and in every parish. If you are a part of a church, any church, a Catholic church, there are families with children with special needs in your parish,
Right.
and if you don't see them,
They don't feel welcome.
what are they? Not that every family's the same, but generally speaking, if you don't see a family with a child with special needs, they're not there. They're not coming. Why aren't they coming?
Most commonly, they do not feel welcome.
And what would being welcome look like?
There are a lot of people that I know who have gone to church and have been asked to step out when their child made noises or asked not to come back until their child could behave. So in order to welcome a family is to love them like Jesus would, is to kind of ignore the little noises. Maybe they bring a train because that helps them be calm. Maybe they clap. Just kind of ignore that and give that smile. Say hi to them. Don't isolate them.
Sit with them. Sit near them.
Sit near them, but don't make them feel like they have to attend to you as well.
Sure, right, sure.
But yes, don't like have 4 rows away from them, but invite them to be near you by sitting near them. Reach out, shake their hands. Don't ignore the children at the sign of peace. Welcome them. Offer
What do your
them
kids
the sign
do?
of
What do
peace.
your kids do? I don't really look up at the sign of peace.
They will shake hands.
Okay.
They will shake hands. They typically are, with all of us. Once we all do, the 4 of us, then usually there's not a lot of time, but we also, they will shake hands with the people around or wave. So if you acknowledge the children just like you would any other child,
Any other
that
child,
age,
sure.
right?
Yeah, if a 21-year-old were sitting by you, would you
Ignore them.
ignore
You
them?
wouldn't.
No,
You would offer them
no.
the sign of peace
Sure,
like you would
sure.
anybody else.
Yeah. Wow.
What I like to say is treat them like everybody else, but understand when they're not.
That they're not, yeah. That every person is unique.
Right.
Yeah. So I think especially, for priests, how welcoming are we? How much do we, so priests and deacons, but, kind of ushers, greeters, making sure that a family, after coffee and donuts after. I mean, I know you guys always, people, will come sit and, but I think sometimes people just don't know, they don't know like what to do. Like, well, if I sit with them, what are we going to talk about?
You're right.
And the answer is we're going to talk about what you talk about with everybody else.
Exactly. It's like, what are you going to do if you sit with them? The same thing you do if you
With everybody
sat
else.
with Bill and Jean.
Yeah.
The same things. So.
Yeah. So I think it's important, here, I know we have families that just to get to Mass is very difficult. Just from a, and that could be from a sort of accessibility standpoint. That could be from the effort that it takes to get dressed.
Right.
I mean, what are the obstacles that people are facing before they ever walk in the door? I mean, at home.
Oh gosh, there are things like if you have to do a medical treatment that might be needed during Mass, what do you do?
Oh, and where do you sit? And
to be able to do that. So those are other difficulties that people have to deal with.
wow.
It could be getting dressed. It could be maybe how much
getting in
time
the
it
car.
takes. Right.
Yeah,
How much time it takes to get the person dressed. So then then the parent or caregiver still has to get ready and go. And sometimes by the time the parent gets ready, the child is undressed again. And, things like that happen.
Didn't even think of that. All right, in our last 30 seconds, tell us about you're helping with the National Catholic
Partnership
on Disabilities. The website was ncpd.org. Tell us about that real quick.
It is a group of people, an organization that helps to make the Catholic Church accessible for everyone.
So you went to their conference back in October, I think it was last year. And
I did.
Anyway, so Lori is really pushing us to be more hospitable, more welcoming, and we're just going to keep on trying. So thank you, Lori.
Thank you
for joining us. Have a great week, everybody.